The waitress said next time the Mafia boss booked the next 99 tables and said, Halcyon City breeds a specific kind of damp. It's not just the harbor air, thick with salt and diesel. It's a rot that seeps into the velvet ropes and the polished marble. At the Vesperine Supper Club, we polished that rot until it gleamed. I was part of that polish. Lena Quill, professional smiler, expert tray balancer, and silent witness. The Vesperine was all low light and high ceilings, a cathedral for the city's concrete gods. The air was a heavy mix of old money, new perfume, and the sharp, expensive tang of oyster liquor. From the bar, the main dining room was a sea of shadows, broken by the hard glitter of the grand chandelier. It hung over us all, its crystal pendants catching the light and throwing it back like accusations. Tonight, the accusations were all aimed at me. The bar was loud. Sable Knox held court at the main VIP booth, the one closest to the Onyx bar top. Knox was a power broker, a man who built careers on handshakes and crushed them with whispers. His laugh was like gravel spilling onto silk. He was surrounded by his usual clique men with tailored suits and predatory smiles, women whose faces were tight with ambition and surgical precision. My manager, a thin man named Brolin, was polishing a glass not 10 feet away. He had perfected the art of selective blindness. He saw the spill I was cleaning. He saw the way Knox's guests tracked my every move. He saw nothing. The problem started with a hand, one of Knox's guests, his face flushed with bourbon and entitlement, reached for me as I poured his drink. His fingers brushed the inside of my wrist, a casual claim. I flinched, pulling the bottle back. "Fill it up, sweetheart," he slurred, his arm coming around to drape over my shoulder. My skin crawled. I stepped back, the heavy silver tray in my other hand the only thing keeping me balanced. "Sir, I can't serve you anymore," I said. My voice was low, professional, but tight. The table went quiet. Sable Knox paused, a cigarillo held between two fingers. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She says you've had enough, Jerry." The man, Jerry, laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "She's just playing hard to get." Then, the crash. It happened fast, but I saw it in slow motion. Another man at the table, the one with the snakeskin boots, deliberately knocked his half-eaten seafood platter. He didn't just bump it, he shoved it right into my tray. The impact sent a shock up my arm. The heavy ceramic plate of oysters, shrimp, and melted garlic butter collided with my uniform. I felt the hot sting of butter soaking through the thin white fabric of my apron, scalding the skin of my stomach. The smell of garlic and spoiled brine exploded in my face. The sound of expensive china shattering on the marble floor was deafening. Then came the laughter. It was loud, barking, and aimed directly at me. They laughed at my gasp, at the spreading stain, at the shrimp sliding down my front. Brolin, my manager, turned his back and became intensely interested in the whiskey selection on the top shelf. Humiliation burned hotter than the butter. I stood frozen, dripping. The light from the chandelier overhead hit the shattered fragments of crystal glasses on the floor, turning them into a minefield of tiny, glittering knives. My lip trembled. I bit down, hard, tasting the coppery tang of my own blood. My first instinct was to run, to drop the ruined tray and flee to the staff room, to scrub my skin raw. I steadied the tray. I would not give them the satisfaction. I straightened my spine, locked my knees, and prepared to take the first step back. "Next time." The voice was not loud. It was soft, almost a rasp, laced with the gravel of expensive whiskey and absolute control. It sliced through the laughter, the jazz trio, and the clinking glasses. The Vesperine fell silent. From the darkest corner booth, the one reserved for ghosts and billionaires, a man stood up. I had seen him before. Everyone who worked in Halcyon City's nightlife had Riccardo Morelli. The name was never spoken loudly. He was the head of the Black Harbor Circle, an organization that didn't appear on any stock exchange but owned the docks, the unions, and the shadows in between. He was always dressed in black, his suits fitting him like a second skin. his dark hair brushed back from a face that looked carved from unforgiving stone. He moved from the darkness into the dim light of the dining room. He didn't hurry, he just walked, and the crowd parted for him. He stopped not by Sable Knox, but by me. He looked at the mess on the floor, the stain on my apron, the trembling in my hands. Then he looked at Brolin, who had suddenly materialized, his face a pale, sweaty mask of terror. "My apologies. Mr. Morelli, we'll have this cleaned immediately. The gentlemen were just—" Ricardo Morelli raised one hand, a signal for silence, and he received it. He turned his gaze back to the floor, then to the main dining room. He looked at the empty tables, the half-full tables, the reservations list visible on the hostess stand. He glanced at Sable Knox, whose smile had become a fixed, plastic grimace. Morelli pulled a card from his jacket pocket. It was not credit. It was a solid piece of black, matte metal. He didn't hand it to Brolin. He tossed it onto the bar, where it landed with a heavy, definitive thud. "The rest of the tables," Morelli said, his voice still quiet, but it carried to every corner. "All of them, for the next 99 nights." Brolin gaped. "Sir, I don't understand." 99 tables, Ricardo repeated, as if speaking to a child. "For 99 nights, booked, paid. My compliments to the chef, but I require the room to be empty of disruptions." The meaning landed. It wasn't a party. It was a hostile takeover, a 99-night siege. He was locking them out. He was blocking Sable Knox and his entire circle of hyenas from setting foot in their favorite haunt. He was using the Vesperine's own reservation book as a weapon. It was a message. It was a shield. And I was standing right behind it. Sable Knox let out a short, sharp laugh. "That's a pricey joke, Morelli." Ricardo Morelli didn't even look at him. His eyes, cold as the harbor water at 3 in the morning, were locked on Brolin. "And one more thing. You will apologize to her." He nodded at me. "In front of your staff." Brolin's blood drained from his face. "Mr. Morelli, please. It was just a misunderstanding." "Now." It was not a request. It was a command, backed by the unspoken weight of the Black Harbor Circle. Brolin turned to me. His eyes were small and filled with hatred, but his voice was shaking. "Miss Quill, I apologize for the inconvenience." It was pathetic, but it was done. The power in the room had shifted, tilting on the axis of this one silent man. Sable Knox stood up, dabbing his mouth with a linen napkin. He pulled a slim phone from his pocket and his thumb began to type, fast and angry. The red cherry of his cigarillo glowed in the dim light, a tiny, dangerous signal fire. "Reservations don't buy silence. Ricardo?" Knox sneered, his voice dropping to a matching quiet. "You just bought yourself a lot of attention." He and his group filed out, a wake of expensive cologne and simmering rage. They didn't look at me again. The room slowly refilled with noise, but it was different, subdued. The jazz trio resumed, but their rhythm was off. I was still standing there, covered in butter, holding a broken tray. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely feel my fingers, but my spine felt like steel. For the first time all night, I was not just the waitress. I was the girl with the stone wall at her back. Ricardo Morelli finally looked at me, really looked at me. His gaze was intense, analytical. He scanned me from head to toe, not in the way Knox's men had, but like he was assessing structural damage. He saw the tremble. He saw the blood on my lip. He didn't linger. His inspection was brief, all business. "Need a ride home?" His voice was a low rumble, and for a second, I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be taken far away from this place, from the smell of old seafood and the lingering threat in the air. But I saw the black card still sitting on the bar. I saw the 99 nights looming. I was a mess, but I was not property to be bought, not even by a protector. I shook my head once. He nodded, as if he'd expected it. He turned and walked back to his corner, retrieved his coat, and left. He moved like a panther, silent and sure, vanishing into the halcyon city night. As the doors swung shut behind him and the jazz finally found its beat, I heard it, from the alcove near the coat check, a sound that didn't belong, the distinct metallic click of a camera shutter, followed by the rapid whir of a motor drive. Someone had seen it all. Someone had caught the moment the ghost of Black Harbor stepped into the light to buy 99 tables, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me more than the spilled ice, that the gossip sites would have it by morning. My shift was over, but my trouble was just beginning. The morning light over Halcyon City was the color of a fresh bruise, watery and gray. At the Vesperine, that light revealed an unnatural quiet. The reservation book, usually a patchwork of names and times, was now a solid block of black ink. Morelli, all 99 nights. The owner, a man who prized discretion over all else, paced his office in a state of quiet panic. The money was guaranteed. A wire transfer for the full 99 nights had arrived at dawn, enough to clear the restaurant's debts twice over. But it came with a new set of rules. The Vesperine was no longer a public supper club. It was a private fortress. His regular high rollers, the ones who greased the city's wheels, were already calling, their voices tight with offense. He had been bought, and he wasn't sure if he was protected or owned. Lena Quill was miles away. Her world shrunk to the 4 peeling walls of her third-floor apartment in Dockside Hollows. The building smelled of low tide and old cooking oil. She unlocked her door, the tumblers grinding with rust, and stepped inside. "Grand-père," she called softly. He was sitting at the small kitchen table, staring at a single, empty glass. His silver hair was uncombed. They moved the docks. "Lena," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the grimy window. "The cranes, they don't sing anymore." "I know, grand-père." She touched his shoulder. He didn't react. His memory was like a fog, rolling in and out, leaving him stranded in different decades. Just last year, he had been the one reminding her to check her tire pressure, his mind sharp as a shipwright's chisel. Now, he was lost. She opened the refrigerator. The small light flickered, illuminating 1 carton of milk, almost empty, and a single lemon. A familiar, cold dread tightened her stomach. The paycheck from last night, stained with butter and humiliation, wouldn't be enough. A sharp knock echoed through the thin door. It was Mr. Karras, the landlord, a man whose presence soured the air. He didn't wait for an answer, just pushed the door open, his stained vest preceding him. "Quill, rent's going up, end of the month, double." Lena's head snapped up. "Double you can't, that's illegal." "It's Dockside Hollows, sweetheart." "Nah," he sneered, his eyes flicking past her to her grandfather. "Costs are up. Hazard pay for the neighborhood. You don't like it. You can be out by the 1st. He was lying. He knew she was trapped. Her grandfather couldn't be moved easily. She felt the blood rush to her face, the same helpless fury from the night before. But this time, there was no dark figure in a corner booth. "I'll have it," she said, her voice flat. Karras grunted, satisfied, and left, leaving the door open in his wake. Lena closed it, her hand trembling. She looked at her own hands, raw and red from polishing silver and scrubbing floors. She would have to take more shifts. She'd have to ask Brolin, the manager who had watched her be humiliated, to give her the closing doubles. The thought made her feel sick. She sagged against the door, and her foot hit a small, square box, a parcel. It was plain brown cardboard, no return address, just her name, Quill, written in black block letters. Inside, nestled on black tissue paper, were 2 items, a pair of fitted, cut-resistant gloves, the kind oyster shuckers or butchers wore, and a box of high-grade medical bandages, the waterproof kind. Tucked beneath them was a small, thick card. It held only 6 words, printed in the same stark block letters. For hands that know their own worth? No signature, no clue, but she knew. The chill that ran up her spine had nothing to do with the harbor breeze leaking through the window frame. It was the same chill she'd felt when Riccardo Morelli looked at her. Across the city, where the true harbor work was done, Sable Knox was not enjoying his morning. He stood on Amaranth Pier, the wind whipping his expensive coat, sharing a bitter cigar with City Councilman Pierce Lander. "He's making a mockery of me, Pierce," Sable said, his voice a low growl. "He bought the whole restaurant for 99 nights, just to ice me out." Lander, a man with a politician's perfect smile and a shark's eyes, blew a plume of smoke. "It's not about you, Sable. It's about the Vesperine. It's our meeting spot. It's our filing cabinet." "He doesn't know that," Sable spat. "Doesn't he?" Lander tapped his cigar. "Morelli isn't stupid. He knows the Black Harbor Circle can't touch the city's books, but he can sure as hell buy the restaurant where the books are cooked. He's choking our supply line. So what's the play?" "We squeeze the girl," Lander said simply. "The rumor mill is already churning. Mafia Boss protects Waitress. It's all over the gossip sites. We make her a liability. We make her the reason his new investment fails." "I've got a man on the inside," and Sable said, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his face. "The manager, Brolin, hates her, hates Morelli more for making him bow." "Good. Find out when she works. We'll show Mr. Morelli what happens when he steps out of the docks and into our world." That night, the Vesperine was a different animal. It was full, but not with its usual clientele. The reservations were all under Morelli's name, but he had apparently given them away. The tables were filled with curious citizens, gossip columnists, and tourists, all drawn by the story that was sweeping Halcyon City. They came to see the place, to feel the thrill, and most of all, to see her. Lena felt like an exhibit at a zoo. Every eye was on her. They whispered as she passed, pointing, speculating. "That's her. He bought the whole place for her. Wonder what she did to earn it." Brolin, forced by the owner to keep her on, watched her with open resentment. He had already done his part, a simple text message to Sable Knox, sent from the back office. "She's on the closing shift, all week." It was a small act of vengeance, a way to reclaim the power Morelli had stripped from him. Lena ignored them all. She put on the gloves. They fit perfectly. She worked with a fierce, focused energy. She was not a damsel. She was not a prize. She was a woman with double the rent to pay. Her personal code was simple. You save yourself. She memorized the orders, counted her tips, kept her eyes down. She was clearing table 47, a two-top by the wine cellar. When she saw it, she'd wiped this table 100 times. But tonight, something was different. Underneath the heavy mahogany tabletop, tucked against the pedestal leg, was a small mark. It was not a scratch, it was a symbol, drawn in faint blue ink, the kind that only showed up when the light hit it just right. It looked like a small anchor, crossed with a number. She glanced around. The restaurant was loud, the new crowd more boisterous than the old. No one was watching. Her heart began a new rhythm, a fast, uneven thump-thump against her ribs. She'd worked here for 3 years. She knew every crack in the tile, every stain on the grout. This was new. This was a secret. She felt a sudden, sharp clarity. The Vesperine wasn't just a restaurant. The gloves weren't just a gift. And Riccardo Morelli hadn't just bought 99 tables. He had bought a battlefield, and she was standing right in the middle of it. The Vesperine was a tomb after midnight. The chairs were stacked like skeletons, the tables bare. The only sound was the hum of the wine coolers and the drip of the industrial dishwasher. I was in the main dining room, on my hands and knees, scrubbing the last of the wine-dark grout. My shift had ended hours ago, but I stayed. I was looking for more blue ink. The service door swung open with a pneumatic hiss. I shot to my feet, the scrub brush clutched in my hand like a knife. Riccardo Morelli stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim alley light. He wasn't in his usual dark suit. He wore dark trousers and a simple black Henley that stretched across his shoulders. He looked less like a boss and more like a high-end enforcer. "You're working late," he observed. It wasn't a question. "You're here early," I retorted. My heart was a fist pounding against my ribs. He stepped inside, letting the door close, sealing us in the quiet. "I booked 99 nights. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth, but his eyes were serious. "I'm responsible for quality control." He walked past me, not toward the bar, but toward the stainless steel double doors of the kitchen. "Are you hungry?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "You missed the staff meal." He pushed the door open. The kitchen was gleaming, sterilized for the night. The only light came from the small, flickering blue pilot lights on the massive gas range. The chef left, but the ingredients didn't. He moved through the kitchen with a familiarity that was unsettling. He opened one of the low refrigerators and pulled out a small, steel bowl. Scallops. "This was the special," I said, staying near the door. "They're better off the clock." He found a sauté pan, hanging it on the range with a heavy clang. He added a dollop of clarified butter, which began to sizzle instantly. "The pan has to be hotter than you think, otherwise they steam. You want the sear." I watched him. He was right. I'd made this dish 100 times for customers, always rushing. He laid 4 perfect, pearlescent scallops into the pan. The tea sauce was sharp and loud in the silence. He didn't touch them. He just watched. "You've done this before." "I washed dishes," he said, his eyes on the pan. "An Italian joint in the North End. When I was 17, the chef was a tyrant named Sal. Sal believed you earned your place by scrubbing his pots. He threw a pan at me my first week." He deftly flipped each scallop. The seared side was a perfect golden brown crust, but he knew how to cook. He plated them on a small, white dish, grabbed 2 forks, and slid the plate onto the steel prep counter that separated us. He didn't offer me a seat, he just gestured with a fork. I stepped forward, into his space. We ate standing up, under the cold ventilation hoods. The scallops were perfect, sweet, briny, with the smoky edge of the butter. The tension that had been coiled in my spine since he'd walked in began to ease, replaced by the simple, human act of sharing food. The blue flame of the pilot light cast flickering shadows on his face. "Why?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. He paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Why what?" "The tables, the gloves, this." He set the fork down. The small sound echoed off the steel. "That man," he said, and I knew he meant Knox's man, "put his hands on you, in my city, in a room I was in. It was a breach of etiquette." "It's my job," I said bitterly, the old anger returning. "It's what we do. We get devalued. At my last job, a customer complained his steak was cold because he'd spent 30 minutes on a phone call. The manager comped his meal and took it out of my tips. We're just part of the furniture." "No," he said. The word was final. He looked at me, and his gaze was so intense it felt like a physical touch. "Vesperine owes you a quiet dinner. It owes you a shift where the only person who touches you is yourself." He had seen it. He had seen the way I flinched, the way I had tried to make myself smaller. He had seen Brolin turn his back. "I spoke to the owner this morning," Ricardo said, his voice dropping. "There is a new house rule, effective immediately. Any patron, regardless of their bar tab, who places an unwanted hand on any member of the staff will be permanently banned from the premises." I stared at him. "You can't. Sable Knox." "The rule is for everyone," and he said, cutting me off. He hadn't named Knox. He hadn't named me. He had just built a wall. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was shared. The sparks from the pilot light danced in his dark eyes. I saw the 17-year-old boy scrubbing pots, and the man who bought restaurants. He picked up the dish and rinsed it in the industrial sink, the motions economical and clean. The moment was over. "Go home, Lena," he said, his back to me. "Get some rest." He walked out of the kitchen, his footsteps fading on the marble floor. I was left alone with the smell of seared scallops and the humming silence. I locked the kitchen, grabbed my bag from the staff room, and headed for the service door. He was gone, but hanging on the hook by the door, a hook that was always empty, was an umbrella. It was not a cheap, foldable thing. It was old world, a long, charcoal gray canopy, tightly wound, with a solid dark wood handle that felt heavy in my hand. Tied to the leather loop was a small, thick card, the same cardstock as the one that came with the gloves. It held 3 words: "It will rain." I stepped outside. The alley was dark, the air thick and heavy with ozone, as if on cue. The first fat, cold drop of rain hit my face, then another. Within seconds, the sky opened. A true Halcyon City downpour, the kind that turned the streets into black mirrors. I opened the umbrella. The canopy was huge, a solid, tight shield that cocooned me instantly. The sound of the storm reduced to a dull drumming overhead. I started the long walk home to Dockside Hollows. The streets were deserted, glossy and black under the sputtering yellow streetlights. My heels clicked on the wet pavement, a lonely sound accompanied by the drum of the rain on the silk. Then I heard it, another set of footsteps. They were out of sync with mine, heavier, 2 sets. I didn't look back. I gripped the umbrella handle tighter and walked faster. The footsteps sped up, closing the distance. They were casual, but the pace was predatory. I crossed the street, dodging a taxi. They crossed, too. My heart hammered. This wasn't a mugger. This wasn't random. This was for me. I saw the dark mouth of the alley that led to my building's courtyard. A shortcut. Tonight, it looked like a trap. The men were close now, maybe 20 yards back. I could hear their muffled voices. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, ready to dial 911. My thumb brushed against something on the umbrella's handle. It was a small metal stud, flush with the wood, cool to the touch. I hadn't noticed it before. I pressed it. There was no sound, no click, but the metal tip of the umbrella, the ferrule, flashed. It was not a small light. It was a blinding, tactical strobe, a violent pulse of pure white light that lit up the entire street like daytime. It flashed once, twice, 3 times, searing a snapshot of the 2 men into my retinas. They cursed, throwing their hands up to shield their faces, completely blindsided. They stumbled back, disoriented, their predatory confidence shattered. They weren't prepared for a target that fought back with magnesium-bright light. They scrambled, tripping over each other, and vanished back the way they came. I leaned against the cold, wet brick wall of the alley, my lungs burning. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. The umbrella was just an umbrella again, the rain drumming peacefully on its roof. I looked at the handle, at the small, mundane-looking stud, a silent alarm, a toy, as Ricardo might call it, a detail only a man who expected trouble, who lived in trouble, would think of. He hadn't just thought it might rain. He knew I would be followed. He knew I would be targeted. The 99 tables, the gloves, the umbrella. It wasn't a rescue. It was a strategy. The fear didn't leave, but something else crystallized inside it. Anger, cold and clear. I was not a piece on his board. I walked the rest of the way home, my spine straight. I locked my door, checked on my grandfather, and sat down at my small kitchen table. The rain lashed against the glass. I pulled out a small notepad and a pen. I would not be protected. I would not be a damsel. I would be a witness. I drew the small, anchor-like symbol I had found under table 47. I was going to learn how to read the secrets written in blue ink. I was going to find out exactly what kind of war I had just been drafted into. It began as a game. I told myself I was just curious, but curiosity is a hungry animal, and it had been fed. My shifts at the Vesperine became a hunt. I wore the cut-resistant gloves Ricardo had sent. They felt less like a gift and more like a uniform. I started mapping the blue ink. Table 47 was just the start. They were everywhere, faint and hidden. Under the lip of the mahogany, beside the brass fixtures, inside the wine stands, each mark was different. An anchor, a compass rose, a series of numbers. They were small, precise, and they were recent, fresh ink. The third night, I saw him, Brolin, the manager. He was at the hostess stand just before service, the main seating chart spread open. He was holding a specific blue pen, a high-end rollerball, and he was making adjustments. He wasn't just assigning tables, he was cross-referencing a small black notebook. He would look at a name irregular, one of Sable Knox's circle, and then write a tiny symbol next to their table number on his real chart. The pieces clicked. The public seating chart was just a map. Brolin's chart, the one he kept locked in his office, was the ledger. The reservations were the clients, the table numbers were the accounts, and the blue symbols. They had to be the routing numbers, the transfer codes for the night's special. I remembered a table of Knox's men arguing over a check, laughing that the $15,000 bar tab was the cheapest toll in town. It wasn't a bill, it was a deposit. This wasn't just a restaurant, it was a high-volume, walk-in bank for washing dirty money. My phone was a liability, a digital trail, metadata. I needed something clean, something analog. My grandpère kept his old camera, a Pentax K1000, on a shelf, a relic from his days of sharp focus. It was heavy, manual and offline, perfect. I smuggled it into the Vesperine in my backpack. I waited until Brolin was schmoozing on the dining floor, his office dark. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely thread the film. I slipped inside. The air smelled of his cheap cologne and stale cigars. The black notebook was right there, on his desk. The click and whir of the film advancing sounded like a cannon shot in the silence. I photographed every page of the notebook. I photographed Brolin's master seating chart. Then I went out into the empty dining room, my heart hammering. And I photographed every single blue mark under every single table. 24 shots, 24 accounts. I rewound the film, the small metal crank cool against my sweating palm. I slipped the canister into my pocket. Back at my apartment, I needed a hiding place, a place no one would look. I went to the kitchen. My grand-père was asleep. I opened the large glass jar where I kept the coarse sea salt. It was almost full. I pushed the small black canister deep into the grains, burying it. The smell of salt, sharp and briny, filled the air, hiding the evidence of the harbor right in the heart of it. The next night, the raid happened. It was 9 o'clock, the peak of the dinner rush. The room was full of Ricardo's guests, the curious public, the bloggers, the gossip hounds. Then the front doors flew open, slamming against the walls. They were not police. They were 6 men and 2 women in navy blue windbreakers with ULI stitched in yellow on the back. Urban Liaison Integrity? I had never heard of them. They looked like mercenaries dressed as civil servants. Their leader, a man with a scarred neck and dead eyes, strode into the center of the room. "This establishment is closed," he announced. "By order of the ULI, we are conducting a priority food and safety audit." Brolin rushed forward, his face a mask of practiced outrage. "You can't do this. We're full." The scarred man smiled. It was a terrible sight. "We can, and we are. We have reports of severe contamination. Everyone out." But they weren't inspectors. They weren't checking the kitchen. They were tossing the bar, yanking bottles. 2 of them headed straight for Brolin's office. This was Sable Knox's crew, the blue siren I'd heard whispers about. They were looking for the ledger. One of them came right for me. "Staff, lockers, where?" They moved toward the staff room. They were going to find my camera. They were going to find everything. "Gentlemen." Ricardo Morelli's voice cut through the manufactured chaos. He stood at the entrance, flanked by 2 of his umbra, men who looked like they were carved from the same dark stone as he was. He hadn't entered. He was just there. "You're late for your party," Ricardo said. The scarred man paused. "This is an official raid. Morelli, stand down." "It's an official booking," Ricardo countered smoothly. He held up a single piece of paper. "I spoke with your director half an hour ago. He was thrilled we wanted to host the Urban Liaison Integrity's 4th annual appreciation dinner. Tonight, right now." The room went absolutely silent. Ricardo smiled, a slow, predatory curving of the lips. A terrible oversight that the invitations didn't go out, but we're ready. The champagne is chilled. Our compliments, of course, for all your hard work." It was a masterstroke, a bureaucratic execution. He had hired the entire ULI. He had bought the raid. The scarred man's face went purple. An inspector cannot legally inspect the premises while he is an invited guest at his own party. His authority was nullified. They were trapped, forced to stand down or expose their own agency as a sham. The scarred man slowly, visibly, unclenched his fists. He knew he was beaten. Ricardo was occupied, greeting the actual ULI director who was now arriving, looking confused but pleased. Ricardo gave me one sharp look. "Stay." But I had the film, the real ledger. I had to get it out. I slipped out the back service door into the alley. The air was thick, promising rain. This was my mistake. "He's very clever," a voice said from the shadows. Sable Knox stepped out from behind the grease trap, his cigarillo glowing. But he's easily distracted. Before I could even think of the umbrella, he was on me. He grabbed my wrist, twisting it. "He won't save you this time. Little bird, I want my book." He wasn't dragging me to a car. He spun me around and threw me against the heavy steel door of a refrigerated food truck parked in the alley. It slammed into my back, knocking the wind from me. He yanked the latch, and the door swung open, releasing a blast of frigid air that smelled of old fish. "Give me the film." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Liar." He shoved me hard. I stumbled over the lip and fell onto the metal-grated floor. The door slammed shut, and the latch dropped. Darkness, absolute, freezing darkness. The engine roared to life, the truck lurching forward. I scrambled to my feet, pounding on the locked door. "Let me out! Let me out!" The truck took a sharp right, throwing me into the wall. I could feel the cold seeping into my clothes, my skin. This was not a warning. This was an execution. The truck sped up, then suddenly swerved, the tires screaming. I heard a loud crunch of metal. From outside, a muffled yell. The truck hit something hard, then accelerated again. Throwing me off my feet, I scrambled in the dark, my hands numb, feeling along the wall. There had to be an internal latch. My fingers found it. A cold, recessed handle. I pulled. The door was heavy, and the wind from the truck's speed fought me. I shoved my shoulder into it. It flew open. We were on the Calyx Bridge. Rain was hammering down, turning the world into a slick, black nightmare. The city lights were a watercolor smear. Far below, the black water of the harbor churned. I heard the roar of another engine, right behind us. Ricardo's black sedan. He was here. The truck slammed its brakes, trying to make him pass. I had one chance. I looked at the wet asphalt, at the blur of the guardrail. I tucked my head and rolled. I hit the ground, the impact a galaxy of pain, my shoulder, my hip, my head all exploding at once. I skidded on the wet pavement. Tires screamed. It was the truck. It had stopped, and it was now reversing, coming back for me. A dark, massive wall of steel sliding sideways in the rain. I couldn't move. I could only watch it come. Then, a new sound. Ricardo's sedan. It didn't just stop. It flew, positioning itself between me and the truck. He was out of the car before it even stopped rolling. He threw himself at me, covering my body with his own. His arms clamped around my head, pulling me flat against the asphalt. He was a solid, warm shield. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice a rough growl in my ear. The world exploded. The refrigerated truck smashed into the sedan, which slammed into us. The sound of screaming metal was deafening. The impact shoved us, scraping us against the concrete until we were pinned between the ruined car and the bridge's guardrail. Then, silence. Just the pounding rain and the ticking of hot, broken engines. The truck, its work presumably done, peeled out, its engine screaming as it fled the bridge. I was shaking, unable to catch my breath. Ricardo was still on top of me, his weight the only thing keeping me from vibrating apart. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't move. His hand was clamped on the back of my neck, holding me still, his face inches from mine. Rain streamed off his hair, onto my face. "Breathe with me," he ordered. I was gasping, pulling in air that didn't work. "No. In." He took a long, slow breath. "Out!" He forced the air from his lungs. His eyes were locked on mine, demanding I follow. Again, in. I obeyed. I matched his rhythm. 1 breath. 2. The panic began to recede, replaced by the throb of my shoulder and the solid, heavy warmth of him. "We have to move," he said, his voice still rough. He pulled me up. I cried out as my shoulder protested. He didn't hesitate, just scooped me half into his arms and dragged me away from the wreck, into the shadows of the bridge's massive support structure. We found shelter in a place that shouldn't exist, an old, abandoned glass greenhouse on the roof of the fish market, forgotten by the city. The rain hammered on the broken panes. The air smelled of wild mint growing through the cracks, and the sharp, metallic tang of broken glass. Ricardo tore a strip from his own shirt. Hissing as the fabric ripped, he began to wrap my arm, which was bleeding from a long gash. "He wasn't after your locker," he said, his voice flat. I froze. "How did you know?" "An old camera. No metadata. It's what I would have done." He pulled the knot tight, his fingers surprisingly gentle. "Well, what is this, Ricardo?" I demanded, the adrenaline giving me strength. "What did I photograph?" He finally stopped, looking out through the broken glass at the dark, rain-swept city. "Sable Knox is a tool," he said. "He works for Councilman Pierce Lander. For years, Vesperine has been their bank, washing dirty city contract money. Lander's entire political career is built on that restaurant. And you, the 99 tables. Lander wants to expand. He wants the docks, my docks. He's been trying to squeeze me out, get leverage on the circle." His voice went cold. "So I bought his bank." He turned to me, his eyes black in the dim light. I thought I was just buying a building. I didn't know the ledger was walking around, taking pictures. The truth landed, cold and heavy. That film, the canister and the salt. "It's the key, Lena. It connects Sable to Lander. It brings the whole corrupt structure down. It cleans my harbor." A new fear, sharper than the cold, cut through me. "They'll kill me for it." Ricardo finished the bandage. His hand rested on my arm for a second too long. "Yes," he said, "which is why they can never find you again." The rain on the glass roof was a manic drum solo, a chaotic rhythm against the sudden, ringing silence in the greenhouse. We were both breathing too fast, the adrenaline from the bridge crash still burning in our veins. The smell of wild mint was sharp, cutting through the ozone and the scent of wet wool from his coat. My shoulder was a deep, fiery ache, but I saw the dark stain spreading on his forearm, where he'd scraped it against the bridge railing. A first aid kit, old and rusted, was on a high shelf, left by whatever gardener had last loved this place. I found a small bottle of antiseptic and some gauze. "Sit," I said. It came out as a command. He obeyed, sinking onto a rotted wooden bench. I knelt in front of him. The light was terrible. Just the watery gray glow of the storm-lit city filtering through the glass. I soaked a piece of gauze. "This is going to sting," I whispered. I touched the cloth to the raw scrape. He hissed, a sharp intake of breath, his entire body tensing. His skin was warm, alive. My fingers, steady all night while carrying trays and taking pictures, were trembling. I wasn't serving him. I wasn't his prisoner. This was something else. "You're shaking," he said, his voice a low rumble. "So are you." He was. I could feel the fine tremor in his arm, the vibrating energy of a man who had just thrown his own body in front of a truck. I finished cleaning the wound, my touch as gentle as I could make it. He watched my hands, not my face. "You're good at that," he murmured. "I take care of my grandfather. I'm used to scrapes." I began to wrap the gauze, my fingers brushing the hard muscle of his forearm. The panic was still there, sitting high in my chest, making my breaths short. I saw his chest rising and falling too quickly. "Breathe with me," I said, repeating his own words from the bridge. He looked at me, his dark eyes searching mine in the gloom. He nodded. "In," I whispered, and we both drew a long, slow breath, filling our lungs against the cage of our ribs. The sound of the rain seemed to fade. "Out." We released it together. The tension in his shoulders eased. The panic in my throat subsided. We took another and another. Our rhythm found itself, a shared, steady pulse in the heart of the storm. "I didn't buy you, Lena," he said, his voice so quiet I almost missed it. I stopped, my hand still on his arm. "The tables," he clarified, his gaze unwavering. "The 99 nights. It wasn't for you, not in the way they think." "Then why?" "I wasn't buying you. I was buying time. Time for you to be safe. Time for you to look over your shoulder and not see men like that. I bought you the space to choose what you wanted to do next, whether it was to walk away from Vesperine forever or something else." I looked at the man in front of me, the mafia boss, the killer, the man who had washed dishes at 17 and thrown his car in the path of a truck. He was soaked, his expensive Henley clinging to his chest, his hair plastered to his forehead. He had put himself between me and the metal. My hand was still on his arm. I didn't move it. I looked at his coat, a heavy, beautiful thing, now ruined and dripping on the floor. I thought of the coat he had left for me at the restaurant, the one I hadn't taken. I looked at the crude bandage I had just tied. Trust, I realized, didn't always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it just seeped in, like the rain through the cracked glass, cold and slow, until it was just there. It bloomed hot and sudden, like embers under ash. The rain hammered the glass, a sudden crescendo, as if the sky were trying to break in. He raised his free hand, the one with the freshly bandaged wrist. He didn't touch my face. He rested his fingers on my collarbone, just above my apron, his thumb resting in the hollow of my throat. A question. His touch was light, but I could feel the calluses on his fingertips. A lifetime of friction. I didn't move. I didn't lean away. I leaned in, just a fraction, a millimeter of a cent. That was all he needed. He closed the distance between us and his mouth found mine. It was slow, careful. It was not the kiss of a conqueror, but of an explorer. It was a question, a test. I tasted the rain on his lips and something metallic, like the adrenaline still on his tongue. It was a kiss of shared survival. I brought my hand up, not to his chest, but to his jaw. My fingers splayed against the rough stubble. He paused, his lips still against mine, and I gave the smallest nod, a silent yes. The kiss changed. It deepened. The careful exploration became a claim. His other hand came up, tangling in my hair, tilting my head. He wasn't a gentleman. He was a man of control, and he was taking it, but he was also letting me hold it. My fingers tightened, and I kissed him back, pouring all the fear, the anger, and the strange, terrifying relief of the last 48 hours into it. Warmth spread through me, chasing out the bone-deep cold of the refrigerated truck. His hand slid from my collarbone, down my arm, to my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us, just wet fabric and a sudden, desperate heat. He shifted, and his bandaged wrist brushed my side, the gauze catching on my apron. He winced, breaking the kiss with a small, rough laugh that was more frustration than humor. "Bad timing," he grumbled. I laughed, too, a small, breathless sound that surprised me. It was the first real laugh I'd had in days. The levity broke the tension, but only for a second. The space between us was charged now. The rain, the danger outside, the broken glass, it all faded away, shrinking to the few inches that separated us. He didn't kiss me again, and he just looked at me, his eyes dark and hungry. He traced the line of my jaw with his thumb, and the simple touch sent a jolt straight through me. The next moments were a blur, a watercolor painting left in the storm. The city lights outside the glass smeared into streaks of neon. It was all sensation. the scrape of his stubble against my neck, the desperate, seeking press of our mouths, the heat of his hands, one splayed against the small of my back, the other tangled in my hair, holding me like he was afraid I'd be torn away. My back arched against the workbench, his body a solid, warm wall pinning me there. His breathing was short, ragged against my ear. My own was just as broken. It was a frantic, silent conversation, a desperate affirmation that we were alive, here, together, while the world tried to kill us. It was an anchor in the middle of a storm-tossed sea. After, the silence was heavy, but comfortable. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a profound, humming exhaustion. I was leaning against him, my head resting on his chest. His heart was a rapid, powerful drum beneath my ear, a counter-rhythm to the rain which had finally softened to a steady drumming. I felt him move, reaching for a musty wool blanket that had been folded on a shelf. He draped it over my shoulders, pulling it tight, cocooning me against him. He rested his chin on the top of my head. I could feel the rumble in his chest before I heard the words. His voice, a low whisper aimed at my hair. Tomorrow, I'm still booking the 99 tables. I smiled, a small, tired movement against his shirt. But you're the one writing the menu. I closed my eyes, the first true feeling of safety in days settling over me. Even here, in a broken glass house on a dark roof, we stayed like that. Not sleeping, just drifting, outside. The sea and the sky blended into a single, dark, unforgiving black. The fight was over, but the war was still waiting. The offices of the Federal Integrity Directorate were designed to make you feel small. They were on the 43rd floor of a glass tower that judged the rest of Halcyon City, and the air inside was cold, dry, and smelled of nothing at all. Marla Ivory, the acting director, did not stand when Ricardo entered. She was a compact woman in a severe gray suit, with eyes that looked like they'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. Her desk was a vast expanse of empty, polished glass. "Mr. Morelli," she said. Her voice was as sterile as the room. I was clear. I do not meet with the Black Harbor Circle. "Good," Ricardo said, taking the seat opposite her without being invited. "I'm not here as the Circle. I'm here as the proprietor of the Vesperine restaurant, a concerned citizen. You're a criminal, Mr. Morelli. Let's not waste time on fiction. And you're a public servant who wants Pierce Lander," Ricardo countered, his voice quiet. He slid nothing across the desk. He brought no proof. He was the proof. You've been trying to build a case against him for 2 years. You have circumstantial evidence. You have whispers. You have nothing on his financials. I'm here to offer you a complete bento box." Ivory's expression didn't flicker. In exchange for what the Circle doesn't do civic favors. "I want the Vesperine left alone. It's clean. I'm keeping it that way. And I want immunity for the Vesperine staff, the innocent ones." "Immunity," she repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "Conditional," he clarified. "I'm not talking about Brolin. The manager, he's theirs. I'm talking about the waiters, the busboys, the chefs, the people who were just earning a paycheck. They get walked away. No interviews, no grand jury, no having their names dragged through the press as material witnesses. You're offering me the city's most powerful councilman in exchange for a handful of waiters." She leaned back. "The math doesn't work. What's the real price?" "The price," Ricardo said, "is that you get to win. I give you Lander's entire network, the offshore accounts, the ghost payrolls, the full history of his illegal funding, the 99 table system, as it were. You get the biggest political collar in this city's history. All you have to do is agree to leave the little fish alone. And me. You. I'm the witness who provides the evidence. I walk, too." Ivory was silent for a full minute. "The FID," she said slowly, "does not bargain with men like you." "That's a shame," Ricardo said, pushing his chair back, "because men like me are the only ones who can give you men like Lander. You'll never get him from the outside. Director, you know it. He's too insulated. You need someone who is invited inside. You have my terms." He left her in the cold, quiet room to think about it. I was in the new safe house, a sterile corporate apartment with sweeping views of the harbor that Ricardo kept for exactly these kinds of situations. I had the film canister in my hand. It was cold. When he returned, I didn't have to ask how it went. His face was a mask of cold control. "It's in motion," he said, loosening his tie. "Ivory will bite. She has to. I'm moving you and your grandfather tonight. A private facility upstate. You'll be comfortable. You'll be safe." "No." He stopped, his back to me. He turned, very slowly. "That was not a request, Lena." "I'm not leaving." I placed the film canister on the granite countertop between us. It made a small, definitive click. "You went in there and you made a deal for my safety. You didn't make a deal with me. I'm not a bargaining chip." "This is not a debate," he said, his voice dropping to that cold, dangerous level I hadn't heard since the Vesperine. "Sable Knox tried to have you killed. He knows you have that film. He will not stop." "Exactly," I said, my own voice rising, fueled by the fear and the fury of the last week. "I'm the target. I'm the one he wants. And I'm the one who holds the key. You gave them a promise. Ricardo, I am the proof. Those symbols, the numbers, Brolin's notes. I didn't just photograph them. I memorized them. I am the ledger." I pointed out the window toward the lights of the Skyline Conservatory, a glass palace built on the cliffs overlooking the harbor. "Lander's fundraiser is in 2 days. The whole city will be there. He'll be there. Sable Knox will be there." "I'm going," I said. "I'm going to be the bait." "Oh, absolutely not." The words were like a door slamming shut. "I'm not feeding you to the wolves." "You're not feeding me anywhere," I shouted, my hands clenched. "You don't get it. You think that night in the greenhouse. You think that made me something fragile, something you own and protect. It didn't. It made me a partner. You booked 99 tables to give me a safe space. I'm setting 99 markers to show you I am not porcelain." He stared at me, the muscle in his jaw working. The protector was at war with the strategist. He saw the woman who had rolled out of a speeding truck, the woman who had calmly photographed a mafia ledger, the woman who was standing in front of him, refusing to break. "You're right," he said finally, his voice raw. "You're not porcelain. You're granite." He gave a single, sharp nod. "We do it your way, but we do it with my rules." The next 48 hours were a masterclass in strategy. The apartment was transformed into a command center. His Umbra team, led by a quiet tech specialist they called Echo, moved in. They laid out blueprints for the Skyline Conservatory. "The FID is agreeing," Ricardo said. "They're inserting their own undercover unit, codename White Stag. They'll be posing as waiters, bar staff, and guests, but they move on our signal, not theirs." Echo looked up from his laptop. "And we'll have audio. I'm piggybacking microtransmitters into the hall's PA system. We'll hear every word Lander says to you." "The signal," Ricardo said, turning to me. The room went quiet. "It's a gala. There will be dancing. Lander or Knox will approach you. They'll try to intimidate you. Find out what you know. At some point, I will cut in." His eyes held mine. "If I twirl you once, just one slow turn, the mission is scrubbed. It means you're in danger, or the plan is blown. You follow my lead, and you walk out. No questions. We're gone." "One twirl," I repeated, my mouth dry. "But if I twirl you twice," he said, his voice dropping, "it means we drop the net. It means you have him. You got the confession, the threat, the proof we need. 2 twirls is the signal for White Stag to move in and for Echo to broadcast his voice to the world. 1 twirl to run, 2 twirls to trap." While we rehearsed, Sable Knox made his own move. The city's tabloid sites lit up. "Morelli's Mafia Shakedown," one screamed. "Vesperine to be auctioned to Lander's highest bidder." The story was brilliant. It painted Ricardo's 99-table stunt as a hostile negotiation, not a rescue. It framed him as a hypocrite who was now selling his prize and me to the highest bidder. The public narrative, which had briefly been on our side, soured. Ricardo read the reports with a placid, almost bored expression. "Let him get confident," he said, tossing the tablet aside. A proud opponent is a sloppy opponent. He wasn't idle. He knew Brolin, desperate to get back in Knox's good graces, would be trying to create a new substitute ledger system. Ricardo made one quiet phone call, not as Ricardo Morelli, Mafia Boss, as Ricardo Morelli investor. He spoke for 10 minutes to a holding company that had, that very morning, acquired the total outstanding debt of the software firm that ran Vesperine's proprietary point-of-sale network. Activate the failsafe, Ricardo said into the phone. A full system audit. Freeze the network, effective immediately. With a single, legal, corporate move, he rendered Brolin's efforts useless. He had locked down the digital front. The only ledger that mattered now was the one in my head, and the one still buried in a jar of salt. The night before the gala, the Umbra team gathered for their final briefing. The air in the apartment was electric. Ricardo was walking the perimeter, reviewing exit strategies. "Marin," he said, not looking up, "you have the service exit on the west terrace." Silence. Ricardo stopped. "Evo, where's Marin?" He looked around the room. Echo checked the security feed for the building's lobby. His face went pale. "Boss," Echo said, his voice tight. "He left 1 hour ago, walked out the front door, took his gear." Ricardo's face went perfectly, terrifyingly blank. Evo Marin, his top man, a man who had been with him for a decade, a man who knew the plan. He knew about White Stag. He knew the signals. He knew the escape routes. Ricardo closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the strategist was gone, replaced by the predator. He knew. We all knew. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. His voice was a flat, cold sheet of ice. "He's not missing," Ricardo said. "He's been sold." The Skyline Conservatory was a jewel box suspended over the harbor, its vast, curved glass roof catching the last light of dusk and refracting it onto the city's elite below. Councilman Pierce Lander stood at a podium, bathed in the warm glow of pin lights, his voice a smooth, confident balm. He spoke of community and progress, his words weaving a beautiful lie among the orchids and towering floral arrangements. The air was thick, suffocating with the smell of expensive perfume and unspoken, high-stakes transactions. I stepped through the main entrance, and the oppressive atmosphere seemed to thin. Just for a moment, I was Lena Quill. But tonight, I was also part of the White Stag catering team, anonymous and invisible. The olive green silk dress I wore felt like armor, simple and elegant, moving like water around my knees. I was a breath of fresh air in a room that had forgotten how to breathe. Ricardo was late. It was a calculated move. As Lander's speech reached its crescendo, I saw the reports coming in on the White Stag comms, disguised as a hearing aid, the lounges, the cocktail bars, the rooftop retreats for blocks around the conservatory. All of them were suddenly, inexplicably booked solid. Ricardo had bought 99 cocktail tables across the district, effectively canceling the after parties and side meetings. He had trapped all the sharks in one tank. There was no escape. No place for them to thin out. They were all here, in this room, forced to listen to Lander, forced to stay in the net. My target was Sable Knox. He stood near the bar, looking bored, a glass of champagne in his hand. I picked up a silver tray, a single, identical glass on it. Echo's tiny recording chip, no bigger than a grain of rice, was bonded to the underside of the flute. I walked toward him, my path intersecting with another waiter. I staged the slightest stumble, a perfectly executed moment of chaos. "Watch it!" I snapped at the other waiter, before turning to Sable, my face a mask of frantic apology. "Oh, sir, I am so sorry. Please, take this one. It's clean." I swapped my glass for his. He barely looked at me, annoyed by the disturbance. I had the bug in his hand. I turned to walk away. "It's messy," he growled, not to me, but to the man beside him. "Lander's getting sloppy. I'm moving the main channel to the Amaranth Pure containers. It's a cleaner path." I didn't react. I just kept walking. The first part was done. Then I saw him, across the room, standing by the West Terrace doors, Ivo Moran. He wasn't in an Umbra suit. He was wearing the silver and gray uniform of the conservatory's internal security. My blood went cold. He caught Sable's eye from across the room and gave a small, almost imperceptible signal, a quick tap of 2 fingers to his earpiece. It wasn't an Umbra signal. It was something else, a confirmation. He had sold us. The orchestra, cued by Lander finishing his speech, swelled into a classic waltz. The floor began to fill. Before I could even process the betrayal, Ricardo was there. He intercepted me as I headed back to the service station. He looked magnificent, a man at the peak of his power, his black tuxedo making him the darkest object in the glittering room. He didn't look at me with affection. He looked at me like any other powerful man would look at a waitress. But his hand, as it took the tray, brushed mine. It was ice cold. "Dance with me," he murmured, not a request. He pulled me onto the floor. It was seamless. To the room. It looked like a spontaneous, arrogant move by a wealthy guest. He swung me into the rhythm of the waltz, his hand a firm, hot pressure on the small of my back. Ivo turned. He whispered, his lips near my ear, his public face fixed in a polite, predatory smile. He sold the plan. He sold the exits. My heart stopped. "What do we do? The signal—" One twirl. "No," he said, his grip tightening as he spun us. "The plan is blown, so we blow it up ourselves. We're not scrubbing, we're accelerating. Drop the net. Drop it now." He steered me into the center of the floor, his eyes locked on mine, daring me to break. He spun me, once. A perfect, elegant rotation. I could feel Sable's eyes on us and Ivo's. Then, before I had even reset my feet, Ricardo spun me again, a second, sharp, definitive twirl. 2 twirls, the signal. Across the city, in a sterile van, the White Stag team leader saw me on their hidden camera feed. "Execute," she said. "Freeze the accounts, all 99. For a full minute, nothing happened. The waltz continued. Then, Sable Knox's phone vibrated. He pulled it from his pocket. His face, usually a mask of smug control, went white, and he looked at Lander. Another man's phone buzzed, and another. A wave of silent panic rippled through the donors. The money was stopping. Sable moved. He didn't run. He strode, fast, to the AV booth at the back of the hall and slammed his fist on the master power switch. The music died. The podium lights went out. The room was plunged into a shocked, murmuring silence. And in that silence, a new sound began. It came from the planters, from the towering floral arrangements, from the ceiling beams, Echo's backup speakers, hardwired to an independent source. It was Lander's voice, not his public one, but a grainy, secret recording. "Call it a disguised donation," his voice echoed, suddenly godlike, through the massive hall. 15% off the top, routed through the Vesperine books. Who's gonna know? The confession. The room didn't just panic, it shattered. Guests shouted, a woman screamed, the sound of a glass table collapsing. Donors, their faces pale with terror, made a simultaneous dash for the exits. Sable grabbed Lander by the arm, dragging him not toward the front doors, but toward a private stairwell marked roof access. But Ricardo was ready. As the main doors burst open, the donors were met not with freedom, but with a solid wall of vehicles. A sea of brake lights, 99 service vans catering, plumbing, electrical, floral, all hired for the same 8 o'clock slot, gridlocking the entire district. No one was getting in. No one was getting out. Then, the piercing shriek of the fire alarm, a fake. The emergency light snapped on, and every magnetic lock on every emergency exit in the building clicked open. But they didn't open onto empty escape routes. As the donors poured through them, they were met by the calm, immovable figures of Ricardo's Umbra teams, standing 3 deep, blocking the path. Checkmate. I was watching Sable and Lander fight their way toward the roof, when a hand clamped down on my arm, hard. I spun, expecting an Umbra man. It was Ivo. His face was a cold, unfamiliar mask. You were smart. Lena? He whispered, his grip like a steel trap. He wasn't pulling me toward the exits. He was pulling me backward into a service corridor I hadn't even known was there, but not smart enough. He shoved me through a door marked Utility and slammed his hand on the call button for a freight elevator. The door slid open. He threw me inside. As the heavy steel doors began to close, sealing us in the dim, oily light, he smiled. The boss can't save you this time. The freight elevator was a cold steel box, smelling of grease and ozone. Ivo did not speak. He held my arm in a grip that was technically proficient and utterly impersonal. The man who had been Ricardo's shadow, who had probably shared jokes with him, was now a cold machine. The betrayal was a physical ache, sharper than the scrapes on my knees. The elevator shuddered to a stop in a subterranean parking garage. A dark van idled by the ramp. He did not ask me to get in. He shoved me, hard, onto the floor in the back. The doors slammed, sealing me in darkness. The drive was long, twisting away from the city's glittering center and toward the industrial shoreline. I knew this smell. It was the briny, chemical tang of the harbor's processing belt. We stopped. Ivo hauled me out. We were at the Arcturus Salt Works. It was a dead zone, a massive complex of silos and warehouses that clung to the edge of the water. The air was dry, stinging my throat, and the ground was a fine, crunchy carpet of spilled rock salt. He marched me into the main warehouse. It was a cavern, vast and dark, dominated by a mountain of gray salt in the center. A single, buzzing fluorescent light illuminated a small circle. Sable Knox was there, standing under the light, smoking a thick cigar, and he looked perfectly calm. Councilman Pierce Lander was not. He was pacing by a stack of wooden pallets, his face pale and slick with sweat. The film, Sable said. He did not waste time on greetings. Where is the original canister? I don't have it, I said. My voice was a dry croak. I know. Sable smiled, a thin, humorless expression. But you're going to tell me, because if you don't... He nodded to a tablet computer resting on a nearby oil drum. He tapped the screen. My blood stopped. It turned to ice. It was a live video feed of my apartment, of my grandpère, asleep in his recliner. Behind him, standing perfectly still, was one of the blue siren thugs from the Vesperine raid. He was holding a heavy, tasseled pillow from the sofa. He's an old man, Sable said, his voice conversational. It would be a tragedy, a simple accident. His heart gives out in his sleep, but you can stop it. Just tell me where you hid the film. I couldn't breathe. This was the bargain. My grandpère's life for the ledger. My mind was screaming, Ricardo, when Ivo grabbed me, my earpiece, the white Stagcom, had been ripped from my ear, but my own phone was in my dress pocket. Had it been damaged in the scuffle, I had to stall. I had to create a trail. He's sick, I stammered, my voice trembling. His memory is gone. He doesn't even know you're there. The location. Lena, or he dies. I needed time. I needed sound. I fumbled for the phone in my pocket, my fingers shaking. I managed to press the side button, activating the last number I'd dialed. Ricardo's. Was it connecting? Was he listening? How do I know that's real? I demanded, trying to make my voice louder. That could be a recording. I want proof. I want to check the evidence. Call your man. Make him. Make him move the pillow to my grandfather's lap. Wah! A sound, low and massive, vibrated through the steel walls of the warehouse, the Arcturus foghorn, a deep, two-tone blast that rattled my teeth. It was the signal for the night's last harbor pilot. Sable laughed at my demand. You don't bargain. Then you get nothing, I spat, projecting my voice toward my pocket. Kill him. You'll still never find it. I'm the only one who knows. Sable's eyes narrowed. He was calculating. He pulled out his own phone. Fine. He put it on speaker. You hear me? Move the pillow. Put it on the old man's lap. The line was connecting, and just as his man's voice crackled, Got it, boss. Click bang. The single fluorescent light didn't just go out, it exploded in a shower of glass and sparks. The entire warehouse was plunged into absolute, impenetrable darkness. "Now," Ricardo's voice roared from the blackness. The warehouse erupted. It wasn't gunfire. It was chaos. It was the sound of shadows colliding. A man yelled, a sound cut short by a sickening thud, the air filled with a new, terrifying noise, the shh of 1,000 pounds of salt. Someone had cut the ropes on the massive ceiling-mounted bagging hopper. Salt rained down like a hailstorm, stinging my skin, making the concrete floor a treacherous, shifting sea of pellets. "Boss, I've got her!" Ivo yelled, his hand grabbing my hair, yanking me back. He had a knife. I felt the cold flat of the blade press against my throat. He was using me as a shield, backing away. It was too dark to see. We were all just ghosts. I heard Lander yelp as one of the Umbra tackled him. A clean hit that sounded like a side of beef hitting the floor. Ivo spun, dragging me with him, and slashed out blindly. I twisted, ducking my head. Cling! The sound of the knife hitting metal, not flesh. An Umbra soldier, moving low and fast, had blocked the killing blow with a large stainless steel bagging tray. This was my only chance. I brought my heel down, hard, onto the thick layer of salt, grinding it against the concrete floor and into Ivo's boot. He slipped, his footing gone. His grip on my hair loosened for a fraction of a second, the knife moving away from my throat. It was enough. My hand, free from his grip, shot down to the floor. I didn't search for a weapon as I grabbed a fistful of the coarse, sharp rock salt. He recovered, roaring in rage, raising the knife to strike again. I threw the salt with all my strength, aiming for the sound of his voice. He screamed, a wet, agonized howl that ripped through the darkness. He let go of me, both hands clawing at his eyes, my waitress skill, my survival skill. He slashed out, blind and furious. The knife cut the air where I had been. A shadow detached itself from the wall. Ricardo. He moved with a speed that was inhuman. He didn't bother to hit Ivo. He moved inside the wild swing, grabbing the wrist. There was a single, sharp crack of bone. The knife clattered onto the salt-covered floor. Ricardo kicked the knife away and shoved Ivo, gagging and blinded, to his knees. I could see their silhouettes now, my eyes adjusting to the single emergency exit light at the far end of the warehouse. Ricardo raised his sidearm, the black metal steady, aimed directly at the back of Ivo's head. The rest of the Umbra were securing Lander, cuffing him. Ricardo didn't shoot. He looked at me, a dark shape in the gloom. I couldn't see his face, but I felt his gaze. The gun did not waver. He was giving me the choice. The betrayal was his. The decision was mine. I looked at Ivo, who was weeping, salty, bloody tears streaming down his face. "No," I said. My voice was a rasp. I wouldn't let him be a killer for me. I wouldn't be the reason. I saw a stack of pallets nearby, held together with thick, black industrial bungee cords. I ripped one from its hook. I walked over to the kneeling traitor, my legs shaking, and yanked his arms back. I wrapped the cord tight around his wrists, the hook biting into the plastic. "You chose money over loyalty," I whispered, my voice raw with the salt and the smoke. "I choose to end this." Touching. Sable Knox, who was by the far wall, near the loading dock. We'd forgotten him. A small metal canister rolled across the floor. Shh! It erupted, spewing a thick, choking cloud of gray smoke, a military-grade smoke bomb. "Umbra, the doors, he's running," Ricardo yelled. The smoke was instant, blinding, burning my lungs, shouts, coughing, the sound of a heavy loading door rattling open. Ricardo was on me, his hand grabbing my arm. "Sable's got Lander, they're going for the vehicle." He didn't run for the door. He ran for the side wall, toward a high, grimy office window. The floor was a minefield, slick with salt pellets. I slipped, my ankle twisting, a sharp pain shooting up my leg. Ricardo swore, a low, vicious sound. He didn't stop. In one fluid motion, he scooped me into his arms, one arm under my legs, the other around my back, and ran. When he didn't slow down for the window, he put his shoulder down and smashed through the entire frame in an explosion of rotten wood and glass. We landed with a heavy metallic groan on the corrugated tin roof of the adjoining shed. And the sky opened. The rain, which had been a promise, was now a deluge. Below us, the Umbra team, coughing and blind, burst from the loading bay, chasing the sound of a roaring engine. Ricardo set me on my feet. The tin roof was slick. We were surrounded by the swirling, acrid smoke from the warehouse, and now the cold, driving rain. It hissed as it hit the hot smoke, creating a disorienting gray fog. I was coughing, my lungs on fire. I couldn't see him, even though he was right in front of me. "Lena!" His voice was a raw bark. "Here." His hands found me in the fog, grabbing my shoulders. He pulled me to him. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't an embrace. It was an impact, an anchor. He crushed me against his chest, his face buried in my rain-soaked hair, his breathing a rough, broken engine in my ear. I clung to him, my fingers digging into the ruined fabric of his tuxedo, shaking so hard I thought my bones would come apart. He pulled back, just enough to frame my face, his thumbs wiping the rain and soot from my cheeks. "It ends tonight," he promised, his voice a vow. "They're gone, Ricardo," I choked out, tasting the smoke. "They're not gone." He turned me, pointing, not down the road, but across the black, churning water, toward the one part of the harbor that was still lit up like a beacon. "They have one last exit. Atlas Pier, the private heliport for the city's kings." "Lander," Ricardo said, his voice like ice, "is going to his getaway." The clock on the Umbra van's dash was a series of cold, green digits. It was the only light Ricardo looked at. We had 15 minutes, 00:15 until the helicopter, Lander's final escape, was scheduled to lift off from Atlas Pier. "Execute 99 net," Ricardo said into his phone, his voice flat. All the emotion burned out of him. Across the city, a new kind of army mobilized. It did not carry guns. It carried propane tanks and deep fryers, 99 food trucks, tacos, noodles, sausages, waffles, all of which had been pre-booked for the week with a massive cash deposit from a culinary festival. They had just received their final location, Atlas Pier. They began to roll, a slow, heavy wave of steel and steam, converging on the pier's single-access road, forming a perfect, impassable, delicious-smelling circle. 00:12. The Umbra Tech, Echo, handed me a tablet. The Vesperine's official social media account was logged in. "It's still got 200,000 followers from the gossip storm," he said. "The floor is yours." My hands were shaking, but my voice was cold. I hit go live. My face, streaked with soot and rain, filled the screen. "My name is Lena Quill," I said, my voice tight. "I'm a waitress at the Vesperine, and I need to show you our reservation system." The view count began to climb. 1,000, 10,000. At Vesperine, we have a code. Table 12 is for celebrations, Table 30 is for quiet business, and Table 47. I held up one of the photographs I had taken. The blue ink stark under the van's light is for moving $500,000 in illegal contract kickbacks. The live chat exploded. The view count hit 50,000. "This," I said, my voice gaining strength, "is not a seating chart. It's a map of corruption. And tonight, the man who owns the map, Councilman Pierce Lander, is trying to skip the check." 00:10. In her own mobile command post, Director Ivory of the FID watched my stream. "He's getting the alert," she said, as her team began to move. "They're freezing the shell accounts. Now." On the pier, Lander's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face going from pale to sheet white. He grabbed Sable's arm. "They're freezing it. The accounts, they're all freezing. Get me to the roof. Now." Sable shoved him toward the helipad stairwell. 00:08. In the back of our van, Evo Marine, bound with the bungee cord, let out a dry, rattling laugh. He was watching my stream on Echo's monitor. "You're all fools," he spat, his eyes swollen. You think Sable has one plan? He's not going to Atlas? He's got a backup. The Thales Hotel, the rooftop pad, he's stalling you. He'll be gone before you even realize." Ricardo looked at me. He didn't have to say a word. I turned back to the camera. The viewer count was now 150,000. "We have a breaking update, I said, my voice sharp, cutting. "Mister, Lander is so important. He apparently has 2 helicopters. We've just received a tip that he's diverting to the Thales Hotel." I saw Echo's hands fly across his keyboard, pulling up a live traffic feed. He smiled and gave me a thumbs up. "But here's the problem," I continued, letting a small, cold smile touch my lips. "He can't get there. You see, the 99 net, the 99 food trucks Ricardo Morelli hired tonight, have the entire waterfront gridlocked. There are no roads. There are no other exits. He's trapped. He has to stay at Atlas Pier. With us. 006. A gunshot cracked it through the night. The bullet pinged off the steel side of our van. Sable. He was on the helipad's access gantry, firing blindly into the maze of trucks, a furious, trapped animal. Ricardo threw the van door open. "Echo, keep the stream locked. Don't lose her." He grabbed me, pulling me out, shoving me low behind a massive shipping container. The rain was a solid wall, turning the pier into a slick, black mirror. The whump, whump, whump of the helicopter blades was starting, a deep, sickening beat. Ricardo pressed an earpiece, one of his own Umbra comms, into my ear. "You run the airwaves," he commanded, his voice a low growl against the storm. "You are the voice of this. Keep the pressure on. I clear the path." Before I could answer, he was gone, a shadow melting into other shadows. 004. "He's panicking," I said into the phone. My voice broadcast to hundreds of thousands. The FID was patched in. "He's scared." "We need the accounts, Lena." Director Ivory's voice crackled in my earpiece. "The specific shell numbers. The ones from your head." I took a deep breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the live stream, "it's time for tonight's specials. First, we have the Lander Legacy Fund. That's account number 47001. In the FID van, a red light on a monitor clicked to green. The account was frozen. Next, the Harbor Renewal Project," I continued, my voice ringing with cold fury as I read the number. "Account 92155. Another light turned green. I was shutting him down one by one. "Live on the air." 003. They started to arrive. Not police, not FID. People, the viewers, drawn by the live stream, by the 99 food trucks, by the promise of the city's biggest scandal. They poured out of the side streets, a wave of phones held high, their lights a sea of digital stars. They formed a new wall, a wall of witnesses. Sable, on the gantry, saw them. He saw the crowd, the pressure. He roared, firing another shot, this one at the sky. He was losing control. 002. Ricardo moved. He was at the base of the helipad, directly below Sable. He didn't take the stairs. He grabbed a thick, wet mooring line, 3 inches thick, that was looped around a cleat. He walked up the side of the container and launched himself into the air, swinging, sliding up the rope, his feet finding purchase on the steel supports. He landed on the gantry behind Sable. Sable spun, his gun empty. He pulled a combat knife. Ricardo didn't draw his weapon. He met him hand to hand. It was brutal. It was fast. The clash of Sable's knife against the heavy steel butt of Ricardo's holstered gun sent a shower of sparks into the rain. It was a fight of leverage and broken bones, a dance of pure, cold violence under the pulsing strobe of the helicopter's landing lights. 001. The helicopter's engine screamed to full power. The downdraft was a hurricane, trying to tear me from my cover. The access door on the gantry flew open. Pierce Lander, his hair was wild, his suit jacket gone. He was making a final, desperate run for the open door of the helicopter. I stepped out. An Umbra man, one I didn't even know, materialized beside me and pressed a heavy, black bullhorn into my hand. I clicked the trigger. My voice, amplified 100 times, cut through the rain, the rotors, and the crowd. It was no longer the voice of a waitress. It was the voice of the city. Councilman Lander. He froze, one foot on the helicopter's skid. He turned, his face a mask of disbelief. I stood in the rain, the bullhorn raised, the light from 1,000 phones on me. "You've eaten at 99 tables, sir," I shouted, my voice echoing off the water. "You're full." The downdraft from the helicopter was a physical blow. It was a solid wall of wind and rain, tearing at my clothes, screaming in my ears, trying to peel me from the pier. Lander was frozen on the skid. The pilot, blinded by the sea of cell phone lights from the crowd, was fighting the controls, trying to gain altitude. I saw it, lying near a stack of crates, discarded by one of the Umbra. A heavy, round, stainless steel catering tray. My old armor. My instincts, honed by 3 years of service, took over. I grabbed it. My arm was a blur. I was not aiming for Lander. I was not aiming for the pilot. I was aiming for the light. I threw it, a silver discus spinning through the hurricane. It hit the helicopter's main forward-facing guide light with a deafening clang. The reinforced glass shattered. The light died. For the pilot, it was like being plunged into total blindness. His guide point was gone, replaced by a disorienting, strobing sea of phone lights. He panicked. He aborted the takeoff, slamming the helicopter back down onto the pier, the skids screeching on the wet metal. 3 seconds. I had bought Ricardo 3 golden seconds. On the gantry above, he used them. The fight with Sable, which had been a brutal stalemate, ended. Ricardo moved inside Sable's guard, a blur of motion, a twist, a sharp crack of bone. Sable's arm bent at an unnatural angle. His gun, the one he'd been fumbling for, clattered onto the metal walkway. Ricardo kicked it into the harbor. "Ricardo!" I screamed. A new shadow. Evo. He had freed himself from the bungee cord. He was on the gantry, moving up behind Ricardo. His face a mask of salt and blood, his own gun was raised, steady, aimed at the center of Ricardo's back. Ricardo was trapped, Sable in front of him, Evo behind. I was on the pier, helpless. I couldn't shoot. I couldn't reach him. The dance. The signal. In the middle of the pier, lit by 1,000 phones, I planted my feet. I spun, once, a perfect, desperate pirouette, the signal to abort, but it was too late to run. I spun again, a second, sharp, violent turn. My dress flared out, heavy with rain. Dropped the net. The response did not come from the FID. It came from the Umbra, from a dark cargo ship moored at the next pier. Fwoom! A bank of high-intensity maritime searchlights, the kind used to illuminate entire container yards, exploded to life. They were not aimed at the crowd. They were aimed at the gantry. Evo was vaporized in a column of pure, blinding white light. He screamed, his hands flying to his face, firing a single, wild shot straight into the storm clouds. Ricardo didn't wait. He moved backward, a shadow against the light, and disarmed the blinded, screaming Evo in one single, brutal, efficient motion. Lander saw it all. He saw his muscle disarmed. He saw his helicopter grounded. He saw his escape gone. He turned and sprinted, not for the helicopter, but back down the gantry stairs, trying to lose himself in the crowd of food trucks and onlookers. He ran directly into a solid wall of quiet, dark-suited men, the FID, the White Stag team. They had used my live stream, my bullhorn, my exact location, to move in from the sea. They cuffed Lander on the 3rd step from the bottom. On the pier, Ricardo dragged Sable, his arm broken, to the edge. The Umbra stepped forward, ready to finish it, to send him into the black water. "You can't wash this?" "Morelli," Sable spat, his voice a raw gargle of pain and hate. "No one gets out of Halcyon clean. The mud sticks to everyone." Ricardo looked at the dark water, then at Sable. The rain plastered his hair to his skull. "You're right," he said, his voice flat, "but some of us learn how to stand in it." He didn't kill him. He didn't execute him. He shoved him, hard, into the custody of the waiting FID agents, a clean, legal cut. The aftermath was not a firestorm. It was a controlled demolition. The urban liaison integrity, the ULI was exposed as Lander's private, extorting army. The Blue Siren team was indicted. Director Ivory, armed with my physical film, my testimony, and a live stream viewed by 500,000 people, held a press conference that decimated the city's corrupt council. The 99 table scheme became a legend, a symbol of the rot hiding under linen tablecloths. Vesperine, the source of the infection, became the model for the cure. The new owners, under pressure from the FID, were forced to reform. They asked me to speak to the new service workers union about rights and safety. Ricardo kept his word. It was the condition for his immunity, the one he had negotiated with Ivory. He signed the Dockside Compact. The Black Harbor Circle publicly and permanently withdrew from all protection rackets involving the city's service and hospitality industries. In its place, he used his own money to establish the 99 Fund, a legal foundation dedicated to protecting and defending the rights of restaurant and hotel workers. The city moved on. The rain stopped. The Vesperine was dark. The 99-night reservation was, at last, over. The restaurant was closed, officially for renovations, but really it was cleansing itself. I stood in the center of the vast, empty dining room. The chairs were stacked. The tables were bare. The air smelled of lemon oil and old wine. The only light came from the blue pilot light on the kitchen range, a tiny, constant flame. I heard his footsteps on the marble. He didn't turn on the lights. He walked to the center of the room, looked at me, his face unreadable in the shadows. He held out his hand. There was no music. The jazz trio was long gone. I took his hand. He pulled me close. His hand was warm on the small of my back, my dress a thin barrier between us. I rested my cheek against his chest, against the clean fabric of his shirt. I could hear his heart, slow, steady, and strong. I breathed him in. No smoke, no rain, just him. We danced. A slow, silent shuffle in the darkness of the restaurant that had tried to break us. He tilted my chin up. His mouth found mine. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss of the greenhouse. It was not the breathless, surviving kiss on the pier. It was slow. It was quiet. It was a promise. It was a long, deep, certain kiss that spoke of safety and of choice, and of an ending that was also a beginning. The invisible camera of my memory pulled back, leaving the details to the shadows, leaving us in the dark. I only heard his voice, a low rumble against my hair as he held me tighter. Stay! 1 year later. Atlas Pier is no longer a dark escape route for the corrupt. The city, healing, reclaimed it. It's a promenade, filled with lights and families, and on the water's edge, where Lander's helicopter failed to lift, sits a new restaurant. The building is warm, made of old wood and new glass. The sign is simple, carved, lit by a single warm light. 99 promises. On the heavy oak door, there is a small, polished brass plaque. It reads, "No one is to touch the staff, period, unless it is a consensual hug at closing." Halcyon City loves a fairy tale. They tell the story, the urban myth of the powerful, silent mafia boss who bought 99 tables to protect a single waitress. But I know the truth. The girl they called weak, the girl they called porcelain, had found her own way to be strong. And the film, The Little Canister that started it all. It sits in a simple black frame behind the bar, right next to the best whiskeys, a small, dark, analog circle, reminding us all that knowing the right moment to say next time can save an entire city from a long, greedy, endless feast. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We love to connect. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more listeners.